The untold survival hack. World War II snipers used to stay awake for more than 48 hours, and why it still works today. If you've ever wondered how a lone sniper in World War II could hold a frozen position for 2 straight days without collapsing into the snow, here's the hook you need to hear right now. Those men weren't superhuman. They weren't riding caffeine highs. They weren't powered by adrenaline storms or some mystical warrior code. They stayed alive and deadly by using a method so subtle, so brutally efficient, that most modern endurance guides still haven't caught up to it. And once you understand what they were actually doing, you'll realize this wasn't just battlefield grit. It was a neurological cheat code. Let's get straight into it, because this is the kind of history that doesn't belong in dusty footnotes. It belongs in the toolkit of anyone who values discipline, alertness, and survival-level clarity. How veteran snipers learned the real enemy was exhaustion. Early in the war, instructors across Soviet and Finnish sniper programs noticed the same problem. Young recruits tried to prove themselves by brute-forcing their way through sleepless stretches. They clenched their teeth. They swore they'd power through. And the result was ugly. Vision distortions, missed glints, phantom movement in the tree line. Simple shots thrown far off target because the brain had slipped into micro-hallucinations. But the veterans, the ones who lived long enough for their stories to matter, did something entirely different. They built tiny breaks into the grind. They let themselves drop into what modern science finally calls micro-sleep. Not minutes, seconds. 10 to 15 seconds of deliberate, controlled shutdown done on purpose, not out of collapse. In Soviet manuals, this approach was described as blinking rest. That name sounds almost poetic, but it was ruthlessly practical. A sniper would settle into position, relax the jaw, slacken the shoulders, let the breath fall into a steady rhythm, and then allow the eyes to close, not in surrender, not in fatigue, but in discipline, a controlled flicker of nothingness. Then a slow reset, eyes open, breath steady, sights realigned, and the cycle continued. Those micro-drops prevented the catastrophic cognitive crash that usually hits around hour 12. They preserved reaction time, stabilized peripheral vision, and kept judgment sharp while the rest of the body was screaming to quit. You want to know why some marksmen could still land a precise 300-meter shot at hour 30? Well, it wasn't because they were born different. It's because they treated rest as a weapon. The other half of the method was something most soldiers never even noticed. Sensory resets. Tiny, deliberate signals to wake up the attention centers of the brain before fatigue shut them down. Diaries from German, Soviet and Finnish marksmen mention the same behaviors again and again. Flexing toes inside heavy boots, tapping a rhythmic pattern on the rifle stock, moving cheek-weld pressure just slightly, sweeping the eyes horizontally, then vertically, in slow arcs. These weren't fidgets, these weren't nerves. These were cognitive interrupts designed to snap the brain out of a narrowing tunnel of focus. Because fatigue doesn't hit like a hammer. It creeps in slowly, tightening your awareness until you're staring through a soda straw view of the world. And for a sniper, that's lethal. Modern neuroscience now explains what World War II veterans discovered through trial and survival. Those tiny movements re-engage the thalamus, jolt the cortex, and expand attention back outward. No labs, no scans, just battlefield intelligence. Snipers who mastered this combination, micro-sleep followed by sensory resets, could remain effective for 2 days without full sleep. Not safe, not comfortable, but operational. And that edge was everything. Reports show that marksmen who refused to use micro-sleep were often useless after 12 to 14 hours. Their accuracy plummeted, depth judgment collapsed, and some experienced the infamous false glint, the moment when reflections appear where none exist, a deadly illusion that could get their own spotter shot. Meanwhile, the snipers running the cycle stayed balanced on the knife edge between exhaustion and clarity. They weren't awake, not in the normal sense. They were maintaining alertness in fragments. Micro-sleep, sensory reset, scan, stabilize, repeat. That rhythm saved lives. And by 1944, several training programs were actively teaching it because it worked across every front where endurance mattered. You're probably not hunkered behind a rifle watching a tree line in enemy territory. But the human brain you're carrying is built the same way. And if you deal with long concentration tasks, night driving, field observation, emergency work, or survival scenarios, this technique remains one of the most practical focus tools ever documented. Here's how to translate it into real life. When your vision starts to flatten and your thoughts begin to slip, stop pretending your stamina will save you. All right. Let's just let everything go still for, say, 10 seconds. No scrolling, no dramatizing, and no inner dialogue. Just a clean drop in mental activity. Treat those seconds as, well, precision maintenance. Then wake the senses deliberately. Go ahead and roll your shoulders, flex your feet, and maybe even shift your posture by a few millimeters. Sweep your eyes from left to right with slow intention. Remind your brain gently that it has a job to do. If you're driving through the night, run this cycle every time you feel the fog sliding in. And if you're in a long search and rescue operation, use it to prevent the tunnel vision that gets people hurt. If you're studying, editing, or doing extended surveillance work, build these resets into your workflow before fatigue takes over. This isn't cosplay survivalism. It's physiological reality perfected by people who didn't have the luxury of quitting. World War II snipers didn't survive endless hours because they were fearless or gifted. They survived because they understood their limits and learned to manipulate them with discipline and precision. That's what made them effective, and that's why their methods still matter. If you want more deep, practical history, real techniques pulled from real battlefields, subscribe to HistoryHQ and share this with someone who understands the value of learning from those who had everything on the line.